Hey, there you are. Welcome back, episode 16. Today, my guest is Michael Lavecchia of Lavecchia Guitars in Nashville, Tennessee. Michael is building gorgeous instruments, and I learned a lot in this episode, particularly about the Multiscale guitar, which Michael is building. It's a TripleNaught model, which combines the Triple O design and the dreadnaught design in one. It just looks beautiful. I love the two styles combined into one. Very unique, and I love the way Michael builds guitars. They are gorgeous. He will be at Tone Central Station in Nashville on Saturday, June 14th for the Local Builders Expo. So go play it for yourself and check it out. Enjoy. Talk to you later. Hey, what's up, Michael? Thanks for joining the club. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time to chat with me. Now, you're building guitars down in Nashville, is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm here in Nashville. I'm in East Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
like 10 minutes away from downtown.
Very cool. And how long you been down in Nashville?
I've been here for about 7 years.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. And it looks like you're in your shop now. Is your shop at home, or do you rent space, or what's your shop like?
So it's actually a really cool situation. My shop is a private space inside of a community maker space. So
Nice.
it's called Make Nashville, and we have a wood shop, a metal shop, a pottery studio, 3D printing, auto body. Most of the mediums that you can work in, we have here, and we have machinery and tooling for all of it. Um, and then there was this little attic space that, after being a member of the makerspace for a year and a half or so, this attic space wasn't being used for anything. It used to be a conference room, um, and it was kind of dilapidated and whatnot. And I've managed, since it's a nonprofit, I managed to, over the course of a few months, convince the board to let me rent it as a kind of private studio.
Very cool. That's excellent. Yeah, that sounds great. It's kind of nice to have a space with a bunch of other creative people to just, have other people around is nice, not be so isolated.
It's so cool. It's really
Yeah.
great, and I feel really lucky for that aspect of it because it would have been very easy for me to end up in like an industrial yard with a tiny space shut off from the world. But
Mhm.
here I'm kind of surrounded by all types of creative people, from people who are just straight artists to people who are engineers who are rebuilding the CNC machines and
Mhm.
working on other metalworking equipment. And it's such a cool mix, and it really helps me when I'm facing a problem or trying to
Yeah.
work through something. It also is inspiring to help other people. That
Yeah.
can give me ideas too.
Yeah, just being around that environment on a day-to-day basis is really just good for the soul. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So, how long you been building guitars?
So I've been working on and building guitars for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
My first like scratch build would have been in high school. Um, but I was doing like mods and repairs and things like that before that. I was one of those kids who like took all the stuff apart. So
Yeah.
I got a cheap Squire Strat and ripped it apart immediately and laid out all the parts on my bed and then put them back together just because that's what I was excited to do. And it just slowly progressed into building acoustic guitars. I
Yeah.
built my first acoustic later on in high school.
Did you go to school to learn, or did you kind of learn on your own? University?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I did not apprentice or go to any schools. Yeah, just kind of learned on the ground. I was super lucky in high school to have a really nice woodshop program.
Mm-hmm.
So I had training in how to use the machinery from a really great instructor who was really passionate about like fine furniture making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I learned the fundamentals of just kind of working with wood there, and then that set me up to kind of pursue guitar building on my own a little bit more. Just learning from every resource available, YouTube, books,
Yeah.
forums. It was kind of just like absorb a bunch of information, find out very quickly that it was mostly bad information, go back, absorb some more, and it just, over time has turned into this.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it's worked because the guitars you're building are beautiful. Sounds like guitars have always been in your life as a kid. Did you play growing up? Did your dad play?
My dad did play a little bit. Um, Funny enough, he kind of fell out of it for most of my childhood, and then when I expressed an interest in it again, he picked it back up.
Yeah.
On Christmas, one morning I wake up, I have an acoustic guitar now, and it was so exciting. And my dad played like a C, a G, and a D, and I thought he was a guitar god, and he was just hiding it from me. But no, I was probably 11 or 12 when I got my first guitar. So
That's cool. It must be really great for your dad to do that with you. I have an 18-year-old son, and a few years ago he got into guitar, and it's been just a ton of fun to
yeah,
share guitar with him. It's a great way to bond. So that's super cool. Now, I've got a couple of questions for you marked down. What caught my interest was you posted on your story a few weeks ago, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, a picture of your guitar, which is beautiful, and talking about like whether or not it was art or not. And that just really caught my attention.
yeah.
I think the answer is yes, of course it's art, but I wanted to delve in on that a little bit more about what makes guitars like the ones that you're building art as opposed to mass-produced guitars, which I also think are art, but it's just a little bit more involved with hand-building guitars. Tell me about what your take on, the functional art thing that the guitar is.
Yeah, well, it's super hard, and it kind of just depends on like where I'm at that
Hmm.
month, whether
Hmm.
I think like guitars in general are or are not art. Um, I've heard I minored in art, and I when I went to college here in Nashville at Belmont, and
Hmm.
I've heard from within the artist community that to make it art, it has to be kind of purposeless. It shouldn't function in any useful way if it's art. It should just exist, and it is the drive to create it, despite its uselessness, that makes it art. And I kind of struggled with that because
Yeah.
personally, I see like an engine as art. I see
Hmm.
airplanes as art. I think, despite just the physical appearance of like incredible cars and things like that, the engineering behind them.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who has like a deep fascination with making things that are aesthetically beautiful, but I'm also really deeply fascinated in the physics and the science and everything going on behind actually, building something that functions really well. And I don't see any difference in the way that my brain works when I'm going in between those two modes. Like I built 3D printers during COVID. I built model airplanes and fly them, and I'm super interested in mechanical and robots and all of that stuff. And I feel like I'm working the same part of my brain when I do
Yeah.
that stuff
Hmm.
versus when I'm doing some marquetry with wood, or even when I was taking drawing classes and things like that. So to me, it's like that anything that the creator is driven to create for any reason at all feels like art. And I guess where I struggle is that kind of destroys the meaning of the word, because now anytime you're creating something, you're creating art. But maybe it doesn't destroy the meaning of the word, it just kind of expands it. And
I feel the same way you do, and I think as humans, we're here to create. And whether it's creating a salad for dinner or creating an airplane or a guitar, I think the process of creation is art to me. And taking thoughts and putting them to use and making them a reality, no matter what it is, I think is really cool. And just because you play a guitar and it's got a practical purpose, I think it can still be art.
I do too.
Yeah. And I love the way that, you can kind of take the basic form of a guitar, for example, and then, use that creative brain to see what else you can do with it, like with your rosettes that you're doing and the interesting shape on the back of your neck that you have. You've also got some interesting inlays on your fretboards, right?
Yeah, sometimes. I've done inlays on the fretboards. I think uh, I tend to I tend to lean towards leaving the fretboards a little bit more plain, just because I like the sleek, clean look of the fret. It's also kind of in juxtaposition to what is so commonly seen on more artistic guitars. Is there's like so much focus on inlay on the fretboard with a crazy torch or
Yeah.
just lots of pearl and things like that. So I kind of like putting a bunch of inlay on the back of the guitar and doing a very interesting rosette, but leaving the fretboard a little bit more tame, using a really beautiful piece of wood for that, I think.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of a fine line on the fretboard between elegant and a little bit too much, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
So, no, I like your style a lot. Do you have any guitars handy?
I do. I got this one right here, that is super duper fresh. Here, let me back up a few paces. So this is a multi-scaled TripleNaught.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about the multi-scale thing, but this has got some really incredible African mahogany with try to get the lighting right so you can see
yeah,
it, but it's just got some simple kind of inlay work on the back, kind of interesting grain book matched heel. I don't know if that's going to show up. It might be too dark. Here's
no, that's
that
great.
backstrap overlay that you were talking about on the back of the neck. We can talk about that. I do
Yeah,
that on every guitar. And then it's got this kind of cool herringbone that I made that takes a very long time to make, but is a really cool touch when it's all fine. When it's all done. So yeah, this is 25 to 26-inch scale length.
yeah.
Two scale lengths on it, and it's really fun. You go ahead and ask me what you want to learn about multi-scale, and I'll tell you.
I do. I have a ton of questions about the guitar. It's beautiful. I love the shape. But yeah, explain the multi-scale to me. I don't quite understand that. And are the frets like kind of slanted on that a little bit?
Yeah, so some people
Yeah.
refer to these guitars as fan fret guitars.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how
Yeah.
the frets kind of change directions. At the seventh fret, it's actually perpendicular to the string path, but other than that, it's varying degrees to compensate for the difference in scale length.
Mm-hmm.
So the low E string has a 26-inch scale length. The high E string has a 25-inch scale length. And
Gotcha.
what I like about that is it kind of straddles the standard of acoustic scale lengths. At least what I think of as the standard, which would be a 25 and a half. That's what most people I know build to. That's what Martin builds a lot of. And
Like on a dreadnought, right?
yeah, on a dreadnought, on a I don't know. I'm in Nashville, so I almost think of dreadnoughts as like some of the only guitars. but I personally love smaller guitars, and I'm kind of always comparing to those guitars, those D28s, D18s, and trying to find something that would be appealing to people who have grown up on those guitars, but is
Mm-hmm.
definitely in its own world. But that's not really why I do the multi-scale. The multi-scale, what's so interesting about it is since you have that extended scale length on your low strings, you get, just in standard tuning, you get a stronger fundamental note on the low strings. You get louder bass because there's a little bit more tension. You can use a heavier gauge string and drive the top a little bit more with that low string. The other advantage of it is that since it moves the saddle position further back for that low E string, it kind of sounds somewhere between a 12 fret and a 14 fret, especially on those lower strings, because that bridge position is shifted backwards. Those pins are further back, and the further back into the lower bout of the body, the warmer and more expressive, a little bit louder sometimes guitars can sound. 12 frets kind of have a very distinct character compared to 14 fret acoustics. But then if you are someone who plays in a lot of low tunings, a multi-scale guitar, there's a pretty strong argument to make that it's a better instrument for low tunings because with that extended scale length, even in a drop tuning, you maintain enough tension on the strings to have a much more natural feel to a standard tuning, and you get much better efficiency out of the strings, and you can get a lot more volume and a much more balanced tone from an acoustic guitar that's, tuned to open D or even below that. And DADGAD players, all of that, really really love multi-scale guitars because they are more well suited to be dropped down into those low tunings.
That is super interesting. I just learned a ton about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
When did how long have multi-scale guitars been around? I feel like I'm seeing them more and more now.
Yeah. Well, I honestly couldn't answer that question. I don't know like who the originator is,
Yeah.
but if you look at a harp or a piano,
Mm-hmm.
those are all multi-scale instruments,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of strange that it seems so foreign to us on a guitar to have different scale lengths. And I've kind of wrestled with this myself. Is like if you look at any standard acoustic guitar, most at least, if they're built, relatively recently, I guess, they have compensation in the saddle anyway. The saddle
Mm-hmm.
is at an angle,
Mm-hmm.
and the low string is always a little bit longer than the high string, or the highest string and the lowest string. So
Mm-hmm.
it's already a little bit kind of built into the system as we know it. It's just taking it a step further and really extending the paths so
Yeah.
that the frets have to be splayed. That's when it gets weird. But I would guess that there's multi-scale examples of guitar type instruments that go back at least a couple hundred years. I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
there's the gut string guitars or the gut fret guitars where they could move the frets around, and in that era, I imagine some people had their guitars set up in all sorts of different ways, and there was probably a few that had angled frets.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. It's very cool. I love the shape of that guitar. I like smaller body guitars too. I just play on my couch, and they're just more comfortable to play.
I
Um,
I love a small guitar personally, and this is
yeah.
a 16-inch lower bout.
I
Um,
was going to say it's got a wider sort of hip down there.
yeah, yeah. So it's really curvy.
Hmm.
But what I love about it is it's called the TripleNaught because it is kind of the upper bout width of a triple O and the lower bout width of a dreadnought.
Hmm.
And then I just kind of I made it slope shouldered and blended all the curves together. Excuse me. But I really love having that tight, small waist and
Hmm.
small upper bout because I'm a small guy, and when I sit with a dreadnought or even a jumbo guitar,
Feel
I get
huge.
shoulder pain. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have problems. My bicep goes numb.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, you could build it with an arm bevel or something like that, but I'm not. I haven't leaned that direction yet. So I just wanted something that, the fundamental shape felt more comfortable to me, and this is just great for me. I really love it, and the width kind of goes out behind my armpit.
Yeah.
So I with the way that I play and the way that I sit with the guitar, it fits in much more comfortably.
Yeah. That's great. It's beautiful. It's definitely art. Can we hear it a little bit? You play a little bit?
Sure. I mean,
Don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'm I'm not much of a performer, but I'll play this little thing that kind of shows off the guitar a little bit.
yeah.
And then this is the
That sounds beautiful. I love the tone on that.
yeah. I don't know how that translates through the laptop computer, but
No, it sounds great.
just a couple fun shapes, I guess.
What's the inlay on the fretboard there? I can't quite see that.
That's just a kind of,
Oh,
I
a
guess it's
block
a
of wood.
polygon because it
Yeah.
follows the shape.
Hmm.
I guess it's yeah, we'll go
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
It
Cool.
follows the shape of the frets, but it's just an inlaid piece of that mahogany from the
Yeah.
back and the sides. This, I don't know what you would call this kind of figure. It
Mm.
is every kind of figure all in one piece of wood.
Yeah.
Um, it's really, really special. I don't know what to call it, but it's African mahogany that basically just looks like it's on fire. I mean,
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
it's really,
And then
really
the center strip, is it 3 pieces or is that inlaid on the back there?
so it is. Yes, it's technically 3 pieces.
Yeah.
This is a strip of wenge
Hmm.
that then has additional pieces inlaid into it.
Gotcha.
The mahogany is glued edge to edge to that strip of wenge, or at
Hmm.
least to the maple veneers on the edges of that. And then you can't really probably see, well, I guess you can see inside.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
got the standard reinforcement of the cross grain spruce back strip, but that expands kind of with the inlay. So those seams are all reinforced with that spruce reinforcement all the way down
Gotcha.
to the tail.
Gotcha. It's really attractive looking. And then I'm interested, I love the back of the neck on that. Is
Yeah.
that inlaid or how do you do that? Especially up at the top there below the headstock. How does that work?
Right. So, well, I'll start by saying like the majority of the neck is built with lamination, so
Okay.
it's fully laminated, and I do that for stability.
Hmm.
All my necks are laminated because it's just, in my opinion, mechanically better. But this right here is it's a combination of things. First of all, I don't think that I didn't come up with this. I do it on all of my guitars, and this is my style of doing it.
Yeah.
But it's typically called a backstrap overlay, and it might be more prominent in traditional classical guitars or
Okay.
older guitars. A lot of people do a volute.
Yeah.
And they bend and laminate a piece of veneer on top of that volute to, match the front of the headstock or do whatever. Mine is, I guess, technically an inlay. It's a back veneer that turns into an inlay as it crosses between the headstock and the actual playable neck area. But I can explain how I do it if you want me to just.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious how you do that because it's kind of a curved piece.
Yeah, yeah, it is
Yeah.
curved, and on the multiscale, it's even more fun.
Yeah.
Because the headstock on a multiscale, I don't know how easy it is going to be able to
Yeah.
tell, but it
Oh,
angles away, it falls
yeah.
away on one side because of the angle of the nut.
Hmm.
But so I use a scarf joint first of all in my headstock, which is covered by the tuner right now, but it pretty much disappears anyway. The scarf joint is I use the scarf joint because I think it's stronger and it's also a lot more material efficient for me in the way that I source my woods and the kinds of woods that I want to use. But that scarf joint does leave behind a seam on the front and back of the headstock. So if you wanted just a one mahogany piece, you would have an obvious glue line on the face of both the front and back. So I always need to kind of cover that up, and I like to think of it as a aesthetic detail, but also a second layer of mechanical or structural advantages. By sandwiching that scarf joint between two veneers, I get to cover up that glue line and keep everything looking nice and homogeneous. But also, I have the strength of never having to worry about that glue line being a point of weakness, even though the glue is usually stronger than the wood. It's just kind of, in my head, it seems much stronger to have that sandwich around the joint.
Gotcha.
So what I do is I cut the scarf joint, and I have the neck pretty much completely blank. It's just a rectangle
Yeah.
with the angle cut, and it's glued together. And then knowing what my target neck thickness is, I make a cut on the bandsaw, following the profile of the neck, and then just jumping out at this point with a curve. So I cut alongside that neck blank and then come out right here with a nice curve. And then I spend a lot of time cleaning up that relief. So this area is, on average 2.5 to 3 millimeters thinner than the rest of the neck. And then I will take my veneer layers and I'll bend them on like a heat pipe, or this is the one. This has got an electric heater in it, and it'll heat up hot. And then I hand bend that, and I have a couple of different clamping calls and stuff with soft faces and whatnot. But it's kind of a back and forth process of smoothing that area out and blending those curves to be, as close to perfect as I can possibly make them in terms of like their radii. And then, once I have a really smooth curve, I know that I can press that bent veneer into those curves. And the hardest part about that is just getting those two bends in exactly the right place so that when I lay the veneer down, it kind of seats itself into recess. And with the Multiscale, it's extra fun. I have a video of me cutting this relief on my Instagram.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out.
I'll probably send it to you if you want. Since the Multiscale headstock veers away because the fretboard and the headstock can't, break at a perpendicular angle, the nut is, I don't know what the angle is on this nut, but say it's 15 or 20 degrees, the headstock also has to twist slightly to accommodate that angled nut. So that twist is also carved into that relief, and then I also have to bend that twist into the veneer, and that makes it take a lot longer.
I was gonna say, yeah. Sounds
But
complicated.
Once I get close, I kind of I just saddle up for a scary glue up. I usually use epoxy, so I have as much time as possible.
Yeah.
And I just crush it in there. I use as much clamping force as I can in these curved areas to really just get that wood to compress. And I sometimes kind of thin out the epoxy so that I can get better adhesion in those areas with a lot of pressure.
It's a really cool little touch as like a trademark for your guitars. It really stands out and is quite attractive.
It's funny too because it's one of those things that I wanted to do on every single guitar since the first one that I did, and I never expected it to be a thing that people would point out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. With me. Yeah. But now it is the number one thing that people say is that they don't see that very often, and that it is like a really cool touch that they like. And it's just funny how that stuff works out. Sometimes
It is.
You come up with a cool font or a design, and you think this is really going to speak to people, and it's the thing that you're not even expecting that ends up taking their interest.
That's usually how it works, but I agree with everybody. It looks great and really stands out. One other question I had for you is about, I saw on your Instagram, you've got wood from a neighborhood tree that fell down. Everybody's got that one tree in their neighborhood that is big and gorgeous, and it's always sad when those big trees come down. Tell me about that story. That sounds really cool.
It's so cool. The tree was 619 years old, and it stood in the courtyard of a church at the end of the main stretch of my hometown.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know how wide the canopy was, but it covered the entire courtyard. And it was like, I don't know, maybe like, it was like a few hundred feet wide. I don't know. It was very, very big. It had these, it was maybe 120 or 150 feet overall. The the area that it spanned, because it was extending out over the road and just had these long branches that just grew in every direction.
Big oak, was it? An oak tree?
Yeah, it's an old oak tree, a white oak tree. The town is Basking Ridge. You could find the tree immediately if you search up the Basking Ridge oak. There is actually a movie made about it, and
Wow.
there's a book written about it by the guy who would later end up sending me some. And the reason for that is because the church courtyard was like a medical staging ground during the Revolutionary War. And the church is maintained a lot of historical records of all the different things that have happened in that area, before America, pre-America. So they have a really great record of just like this tree's life and everything that it's seen. So, I grew up in this town. The tree, while I go on to college, in 2017, the tree had to come down. Before that, the town had workers drive rebar into the ground through the root system. They poured 9,000 pounds of concrete. There's some crazy photos of the cross sections of the log with the concrete in the center.
Wow.
And they did everything they could. They cabled up the branches. They did everything they could to keep it standing. In 2017, though, it had to come down. So later on, it comes down, and I don't think too much about it more. And later on, a girl who I grew up with was neighbors of the sawyer who ended up milling up the tree. And she's a musician, and she has a good relationship with her neighbor. And he reached out to me to have me build her a guitar from the wood. And he actually sent me enough of the wood to build several guitars out of. So I'm working on that guitar now. I could pull down the top and show you. This is the top. This is some nice old German spruce, but inside the rosette here is that old oak. And you can see it's got all of these little fissures and flaws that have been interesting to try and work with. This is like a funny situation, is like typically in guitar building, we try to find sections of the cleanest, clearest material, straight grained, or at least if it's not straight grained, the most beautiful material. But in this case, I'm trying to use as much of the wood as I possibly can, and I'm also kind of trying to accentuate the story of it. So some of these fissures and cracks and flaws, if I can work with them in a way that's still structurally stable, I want them included in the final guitar. So I have this rosette made, and I'm working on the back panel and the sides there, but this is the first of the oak guitars. So
Gotcha.
excited for it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. My dog is going nuts in the background. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a cool story. How many guitars do you think you'll get out of that?
I think I have enough for about 4, and maybe 5 if I get really creative with the way I assemble the back panel.
Yeah.
I'll make it a 5-piece back or something.
So cool. So all your guitars, are they built to order? Are they commissions, or are you selling them in stores?
I would say that the majority are commissions, but I also do a lot of repair work, right? So when I don't have as many commissions, I'm mainly focused on repairs. It's Nashville after all, so there's no shortage of acoustic guitars and electric guitars that need work. But I do a little bit of spec building as well. That Multiscale that I showed you is a spec build, and the reason that I built it on spec is I did a guitar show here in Nashville, the Amigo show, and I brought one of my first Multiscale guitars, which was a commission, and everybody was so interested in it, and I wanted people to experience a Multiscale acoustic guitar, but it was a brand new commissioned French polished guitar, so I was very nervous about anybody that I didn't have a relationship with picking it up and playing it. So I built one that people can get their hands on. So if anybody's listening to this and they're in Nashville, you can reach out to me, and I would be happy to have you visit and play the guitar. I'm
Yep.
also doing another event later this month. I don't know when this comes out, but June 15th. There'll be
Nice. It'll come out before that. So I'll definitely post a link to your website and get some other information for you for the show notes.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I appreciate your time talking with me. Your guitars are gorgeous, definitely art, and I just love the way you're that TripleNaught is so cool. The combination of those guitars is really unique. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. So, congrats on that design.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'll put information in the show notes, and thanks again for joining the club. Take
Awesome.
care.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.